Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive.
Great to be back.
Today, we're really immersing ourselves in quite a profound body of work. It's all focused on consciousness, or what Dr. Maqsood Azeemi calls shower.
Yes, the very mechanism of our inner life.
We've got some really fascinating sources here, and the mission, as always, is to pull out practical, actionable knowledge for you, things to help strengthen your mind, sharpen your critical thinking.
And it's so crucial, isn't it? We spend ages optimizing our physical health, our diet, exercise, but often neglect the inner operating system.
Totally. So the sources jump right in with a core question. What actually happens? What are the effects of a weak shower when that inner system isn't strong?
Yeah, what are the consequences? And they start with this really powerful analogy.
Comparison to physical organs?
Exactly. Think about it physically. If your heart's weak, you just can't sustain effort, right? Weak lungs mean you're starved for oxygen.
Okay, makes sense.
Well, a weak consciousness, a weak shower, it directly limits your ability to function effectively, to meet your objectives. The sources call this takazaki takmil, fulfilling life's demands.
So weak consciousness means you can't rise to challenges. You can't meet your potential.
Pretty much. You're fundamentally handicapped in achieving what you need to achieve. Your inner capacity is just diminished.
Right. So if shower is like an organ or maybe a muscle, it needs looking after. It needs a maintenance plan.
Precisely. And the principles are surprisingly similar to physical health. You need the right diet, and you do the right kind of exercise.
Okay, let's break that down. The diet first. What does that mean for consciousness? Managing input.
Exactly that. You have to be conscious of what you're feeding it. The good stuff, positive thoughts, genuine happiness, that feeling of inner contentment, itminin.
And the bad stuff. The mental junk food.
That would be fear, anxiety, worry, general disorder, cough, parshani, intishar. These things actively weaken your consciousness. So step one is consciously choosing positivity and starving the negativity.
Okay, managing input is the diet. That makes sense. But exercise implies something active, right? Avoiding bad news feels, well, passive. How do you actively strengthen shower?
It is absolutely an active process. The core exercise is what the sources call changing the angle of your thought, zawiya hifekr.
Changing the angle, how?
Well, when your consciousness is weak, your default is often to just fixate on the problem. The worries, the doubts, the wuse or andesh, you just loop on them.
We all do that sometimes.
Right. The exercise is forcing a mental shift. You deliberately move your focus away from just identifying the problem and towards actively seeking solutions, hal sokna.
Ah, okay. So instead of just replaying the worry.
You start rehearsing the solution. It's a very practical distinction.
And the sources even give techniques for this.
They do. Very concrete stuff. Take the problem, whatever it is, and actually write it down. Then force yourself, and it might feel forced at first, to brainstorm multiple potential solutions. 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you can come up with.
Why writing it down specifically?
It focuses the mind. That focus concentration yakasu is apparently the key. It helps engage the subconscious, the la shower, which is where deeper insights and connections reside. Writing it down, kind of, unlocks that.
So the subconscious starts suggesting things once you're focused.
That's the idea. It starts bubbling up connections, potential paths forward that your conscious, worried mind might have missed.
But what if you do all the writing, the brainstorming, and you still feel stuck? You just can't see the solution. Is that where it ends?
No, this is where the spiritual dimension comes in very practically. If your focused human effort hits a wall, the guidance is to turn to deep prayer, sajares.
So moving beyond just mental effort.
Yes. It's described as a way to connect more deeply. And through that connection, an answer can apparently come suddenly. Like a dhamaka, the sources say, a blast of insight.
Where does that insight come from? Is it totally external?
Interestingly, the sources suggest it often leverages the knowledge you already have stored in your memory, your hafiza. The divine connection helps you see the pattern, connect the dots in a new way that you couldn't before. It's an inspired arrangement of existing information.
Okay, that's the positive side, building strength. But then the sources talk about something actively working against this satanic system.
Yes, the shaitani charaka.
Yeah.
It's identified quite directly as the modern media environment.
The constant flood of information.
Specifically, the constant blast of negative information. The bad news, wars, disasters, gossip, endless conflict, delivered through social media, news feeds, TikTok, YouTube, you name it.
And why satanic? That's really strong terminology.
It is strong. I think the reasoning ties back to the definition of shower. If consciousness is about order and arrangement, then this constant influx of negativity, fear, and chaos is designed, intentionally or not, to create disorder.
So it's about the effect. It weakens consciousness by planting seeds of doubt, fear, anxiety, keeping the mind fragmented.
Exactly. It prevents that calm, positive state needed for strong shore. It promotes the very things, hatred, destruction, individualism, that are seen as characteristic of Shaitanat, or forces opposing spiritual order.
So the sources aren't necessarily saying, like, every news anchor is malicious, but that the system itself has this detrimental effect on our inner state.
That seems to be the core argument. The effect is disordering. Recognizing this constant assault on your attention, realizing it's designed to weaken your consciousness, is a crucial first step.
It really reframes things, doesn't it? Scrolling through a newsfeed isn't just killing time. It could be actively, well, poisoning your consciousness.
That's the perspective offered, yes. And the countermeasure goes back to that exercise, the Zawiya fix.
Yeah.
If you encounter negativity, you actively practice thinking, okay, how could this be solved? You engage the solution-finding part of the brain instead of just absorbing the fear.
That mental pushback becomes the daily workout.
Precisely. It counters the constant negative input.
Okay, this idea of order versus disorder seems central, which actually brings us perfectly to the next section, really digging into the word sha'ur itself. We've been using it as consciousness, but the root meaning is apparently more specific.
It is. The sources link it to the Arabic root shin and re, which relates to poetry, shur, contrasting it with prose, nasar.
Poetry versus prose, how does that connect to consciousness?
Well, prose can be just information flowing, unstructured thoughts, data dumps, but poetry requires arrangement. It has meter, rhythm, structure, rules. It's ordered information.
Ah, so sha'ur isn't just knowing things.
It's the deliberate, structured arrangement, tartib, of information within your mind. It's organized knowledge, not just raw data.
That's a fundamental shift in understanding. It's not about how much you know, but how well organized it is, like a well-filed cabinet versus a messy drawer.
Exactly. And that reframes the subconscious, or the sha'ur, too.
So la sha'ur isn't unconscious in the sense of not knowing.
Not exactly. According to this framework, it's where that same information exists, but in its raw, unarranged state called halat. It's the potential, the raw material, before it's been ordered and structured by the conscious sha'ur. The brilliant ideas in the junk drawer, maybe.
Okay. And this system of arranged consciousness isn't just personal, is it? The sources describe multiple layers.
Yes, a hierarchy. 4 main levels are outlined.
Starting with the individual.
Right. You have your own individual sha'ur, infradi sha'ur, your personal arranged knowledge base.
Then it scales up.
Massively. Combine the consciousness of all, say, 8 billion humans currently alive, and you get the collective sha'ur, nawi sha'ur.
Wow. And beyond that?
Then you have the cosmic sha'ur, kanadi sha'ur, which is described as the sum total of all collective consciousnesses across all existence.
And the ultimate source.
The creator's sha'ur,
Okay.
the fundamental source of the order and arrangement inherent in the universe itself.
Okay, those are huge concepts. Cosmic consciousness. How does knowing that help someone, dealing with their everyday anxiety or trying to solve a problem at work?
It provides context. It shows you're part of a vast, ordered system.
Yeah.
But more practically, the sources then map this onto something very immediate. The process of a single thought. They link the 7 spiritual levels, the Sabha Samawat, or 7 heavens, to the neurological journey information takes to become action.
7 heavens in a single thought. That sounds incredibly fast.
It happens in a fraction of a second, apparently.
Huh.
But there's a distinct sequence, a flow.
Can you walk us through those stages, simply?
Let's try. Think of it like a chain reaction in your mind and body. Stage 1, information, until it comes in. Let's say you see an email about a challenging new project.
Okay, got the email.
Stage 2, that might trigger a fantasy, wahama. You briefly imagine failing spectacularly or maybe succeeding brilliantly, just a fleeting image.
Right, the initial reaction.
Stage 3, you focus. The fantasy coalesces into a specific thought, Kyle. Okay, this project requires X, Y, and Z.
Getting concrete.
Stage 4, you analyze that thought, plan it out a bit more. It becomes a concept or imagination, tasawwur. You visualize the steps needed.
Making a mental plan.
Stage 5, this concept generates sensations. Esasat, maybe a feeling of pressure or excitement, maybe the color of the challenge. It engages your senses internally.
Feeling the weight of it.
Stage 6, these sensations trigger actual electrical and chemical impulses in your brain and glands. Adrenaline, cortisol, neurotransmitters firing.
The biology kicks in.
And finally, stage 7, motor impulses. Those biological signals translate into physical action or movement. You start typing a reply, pick up the phone, stand up to get coffee. You do something.
Wow. So from raw data to physical action in 7 steps, bridging the spiritual and the neurological, that's quite a model.
It is, and it positions the human being called the Khalifatullah in a really central role.
As a bridge.
Exactly. The sources talk about 7 traditional realms of creation. Inanimate, plants, animals, angels, jinn, and the human being, all stemming from the creator, Shaksi Akbar. The human, Shaksi Askar, acts as the conduit, the operator who can consciously navigate these 7 stages, linking the potential to the actual.
We're ones who can take information and purposefully turn it into ordered action through this process.
That's the unique capability highlighted. And fulfilling this role, strengthening that capability, relies on continuous effort in 3 key areas.
The 3 pillars.
Knowledge, ilm, reflection, fiqh, and action, amal. You need to constantly learn, constantly reflect on, and organize that knowledge. That's the shao part, and then immediately put it into practice through action. It's a cycle.
Learn, arrange, do, repeat.
That's the essence of developing a strong, functional consciousness, according to this framework.
But action, it needs drive, right? Motivation.
Which leads us into another really fascinating, maybe counterintuitive idea from the sources, the principle of demand, explained through the nature of water. Yes, this is a profound point. Basic physics tells us water flows downhill, right? Nasheb. Science uses osmosis and capillary action to explain how it gets up trees.
Standard stuff.
But the deeper spiritual perspective presented here is different. It argues that fundamentally, water chases demand. Talab.
It follows the need, the thirst.
That's the idea. How does water get 200 feet up a massive tree?
Yeah.
Or inside a sealed coconut? Narial. The argument is that the thirst, the payas or talab of that topmost leaf, or the developing coconut flesh, creates a kind of vacuum, a demand, that pulls the water upward, seemingly against its nature.
So demand precedes supply. The need dictates the flow.
That's the principle. The existence of thirst causes the water to move towards it.
Yeah.
And understanding this, that demand dictates movement, is key to understanding the biggest obstacle to our spiritual and personal progress.
Which the sources identify as resistance.
Muzahamat. Exactly. Resistance, and again, the language is strong. Resistance is defined as stemming from shaitanat acting in opposition to the divine order.
Why such a strong link? What's the mechanism?
Because, according to the sources, resistance fundamentally arises from personal dislike napasandiji. You resist doing something, even if you know it's beneficial or required, simply because you don't like it. You don't prefer doing it.
Okay, I can see that. Procrastination often comes from not wanting to do the task.
Right. And the characteristics associated with shaitanat are given as hatred, destruction, and individualism, prioritizing the self-desires over a larger order or purpose. So when your personal dislike stops you from taking a necessary constructive action, your individual preference is creating disorder. It's resisting the flow towards fulfillment.
So again, it's about order versus disorder. My personal preference, my dislike, creates internal chaos that stops progress.
Precisely. It's a structural definition. That dislike is the mechanism of resistance.
Which leads to that very stark directive mentioned in the sources, the one about crushing resistance.
Yes. Crush the resistance mercilessly. Muzamat ko berami se kucha diya karen. It sounds harsh, but the meaning is specific.
Maybe.
It means ruthlessly identifying and eliminating your own personal dislikes and preferences when they conflict with the path you recognize as right or necessary for your growth, or aligned with a higher purpose. It's about overriding your personal comfort zone for the sake of order and progress.
That is challenging. It asks you to actively go against your own feelings of aversion.
Deeply challenging, and it culminates in this really powerful distinction about faith and identity.
Go on.
The sources stated quite plainly, acting based on your personal preference makes you, in that moment, a kafir, one who covers or denies the truth, the right path.
Because you're prioritizing your own desire over the known good.
Yes, but consciously choosing to follow the divine preference, the path of order, even if you dislike it, makes you a Muslim one who submits to that higher order.
Okay. Submission to order over personal preference.
There's one more level. Achieving a state of inner contentment, itminan, while following that divine preference, finding peace and acceptance in it. That is what elevates one to a moment, a true believer whose inner state aligns with the outer action.
So the journey is from acting on dislike to acting despite dislike to finding contentment in acting rightly. Wow, that reframes the entire spiritual path as managing preference.
It really does. It becomes about aligning your internal state with the principles of order, which, logically, leads us to how this knowledge itself is structured and taught within the Azeemia Silsila.
Right, the specific framework founded by Kalandar Baba Alia. The sources emphasize that his core work, Lawiya Kalam, was written by prophetic command, aiming to present these deep esoteric teachings.
As a science, that's the key word, ilm-i-sina, the knowledge of the heart, presented as systematically organized and arranged knowledge.
Making it verifiable, almost testable, rather than just based on blind faith.
Exactly. It moves spirituality into a realm of principles, processes, and predictable outcomes if you follow the method. It emphasizes structure and system over personality.
And speaking of personality, a huge part of this structure seems to be deliberately dismantling the traditional master-disciple hierarchy, doesn't it? To avoid personality worship, Shaksat Parosti.
Absolutely critical to their approach. Very strict rules were put in place.
Gotcha.
No one sits as a formal Gedi Nashin, a successor or master figurehead. There's no single person designated as the ultimate authority after the founder.
Interesting. What else?
And terminology is key. No one is referred to as a murid, a disciple. Everyone is called a dost, a friend.
Friend. That completely changes the dynamic.
It does. It flattens the hierarchy immediately. It implies mutual respect and a shared journey rather than devotion to a person. The power is intentionally shifted away from any individual teacher and onto the system, the teachings themselves.
And they even have rules about joining, something about reviewing everything first.
Yes, candidates are told to thoroughly review the rules and teachings. The phrase used is decalcarlo. Really look into it deeply before joining, because leaving afterwards is discouraged. It emphasizes informed commitment to the system, not impulsive attachment to a person.
So the whole setup pushes towards self-reliance, self-study.
Exactly. Spiritual progress is framed very much like earning an academic degree, like a PhD perhaps. It's achieved through your effort. Self-study, personal reflection, dedicated practice.
And the role of the dost, the friend or mentor.
To provide guidance, clarifications, support, but not absolute authority. They are fellow travelers, maybe just a bit further down the road.
And the sources mention Dr. Azeemi's own academic path as an example of this.
Yes, it's presented as a kind of proof of concept. He apparently pursued his own education largely through private study, right up to the master's level, and then earned a PhD based on his scientific work in chromopathy.
So he embodied the principle. You can achieve high levels through dedicated, self-guided effort, using the available knowledge resources.
Precisely. It underscores the message.
Yeah.
Focus on the knowledge, focus on the founder's teachings, Kalandar Baba Alia, but don't get attached to the personality of the person currently explaining it. That attachment itself can become a weakness, a dependency that hinders your own shower.
Fascinating. It's a system designed to empower the individual within a structured framework.
That seems to be the core intention.
So let's try to wrap this up. If we distill this whole deep dive on Shore, what's the biggest takeaway for someone listening?
I think it's the sheer agency you have. Consciousness, shower, isn't some fixed mystical thing. It's presented as a practical, structured system within you. And crucially, it's a system you can actively, deliberately strengthen.
Like a muscle. Through that mental diet, managing your input, choosing positivity, starving fear.
Right. And through the mental exercise, consciously shifting your thought angle from dwelling on problems to actively brainstorming solutions. Zaweya Ifik.
And recognizing that the modern world, with its constant negativity, often functions as a system actively trying to weaken that consciousness to keep it disordered.
Yes. Understanding that dynamic is key. And then, perhaps the toughest part, identifying and actively crushing your own internal resistance, your personal dislikes and preferences when they block the path of order and growth.
Because that resistance, that napasandiji, is identified as the very mechanism of disorder.
Exactly. Which leads us, I suppose, to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on.
Good.
Reflect on this possibility. Could true spiritual freedom, true strength of shower, lie in systematically dismantling that deeply ingrained habit we all have? The habit of confusing what we personally prefer, what feels easy or comfortable, with what is actually structurally true or necessary for order and growth.
So separating personal preference from objective principle.
Yes. What if letting go of that confusion is what finally allows your consciousness, your shower, to function at its full, unimpeded potential? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. A powerful place to leave it for today.
Indeed.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope you found it valuable.
Yeah, I hope it sparks some useful thoughts.
If you did find this helpful, please do consider sharing it with friends or family who might be asking similar questions, or anyone you think could benefit from this perspective.
It really helps get these ideas out there.
And if you haven't already, hitting subscribe or like, maybe sharing in relevant groups, that's always hugely appreciated. It's how these conversations can continue and reach more people. Your sharing really is the best feedback for us.
Absolutely.
So with sincere thanks again for your time and attention, we wish you all the very best. Until next time.
Keep that consciousness sharp. We'll see you on the next deep dive.